The marble floors of the Kensington estate gleamed under the soft morning sun, the grand chandelier above, throwing glints of gold across the white and cream interior. A place of elegance and wealth, the home of Charles Langford, a tech tycoon, and one of the richest men in the city. Yet, despite his billions, his life was anything but full. He spent most of his time overseas, running his empire, while his young son Jacob was left behind with a revolving door of caregivers. Today, however, things were different. Charles had flown back unexpectedly from Singapore. No press, no assistant, no announcement, just a quiet private jet and a single suitcase. Something had been nagging him for days, a father's intuition, perhaps. Jacob hadn't sounded like himself during their last video call. His smile had been forced, eyes darting to the side as if someone was watching. The child who once bounced with excitement at the sound of his father's voice now ended the call with "K, bye," and not much else. Charles wasn't just rich, he was brilliant. He knew when something was wrong. But nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to see. When he stepped through the tall glass doors, the house was eerily silent. No staff scurried to greet him. The head maid Judith was nowhere in sight. Even the security guard at the main gate had been absent. Odd. He moved quietly through the halls, the sound of his Italian leather shoes muffled by thick rugs. Then, from the corridor near the guest wing, he heard it. Soft humming. A woman's voice, warm, soothing, familiar. He followed the sound. The door to Jacob's playroom was slightly ajar. Charles pushed it open slowly, unsure of what he expected. Maybe his son watching cartoons, maybe a careless maid napping on the couch. Instead, what he saw made him freeze in his tracks. There she was, Maria, the new maid. Young, barely in her 20s, with her dark hair tied back, wearing a plain uniform. She sat cross-legged on the floor, gently cradling Jacob in her arms. The boy, no more than 6, had tears in his eyes. His shirt was soaked with sweat, his breathing rapid, shallow. She, menino. It's just a memory. You're safe now. You're safe, Maria whispered, stroking his hair with the kind of tenderness Charles hadn't seen since his wife died. Jacob clung to her shirt. Burying his face against her chest, Maria glanced up and froze. Sir, I didn't know you were Charles held up a hand, his face unreadable. What happened? She hesitated. Nightmare. He has them almost every night. I've been staying with him until he calms down. He doesn't like being alone. He looked at his son, now asleep in her arms, his chest finally rising and falling at a peaceful rhythm. That moment shattered something in Charles. Not because Maria had overstepped, but because she hadn't. She had done something no one else in that house had bothered to do. She had been there. As Charles sat down across from her on the plush carpet, he noticed things he hadn't seen before. Toys scattered but arranged neatly after use. A drawing of a woman holding hands with a small boy, Maria and Jacob. Boy had written in clumsy crayon, "Thank you for making me not scared anymore." How long has this been going on? Charles asked quietly. Since your last trip. I think he's been lonely. Judith, she usually just turns on the TV. But when I came, I started reading him bedtime stories. First he didn't want to talk, but then, ... She trailed off, her voice soft. He needed a mother. Those words hit Charles like a punch to the chest. Since his wife's death in a car accident 3 years ago, he had buried himself in work. He told himself that providing the best tutors, the best home, the best money could offer, that it would be enough. But in that moment, he realized how badly he had failed his son, and how much Maria had done to fill that gap. She didn't do it for money. Her shoes were worn out, her fingers were calloused, but her soul, it was the richest thing in the room. Charles stood and walked out without another word, his mind racing. That night, he sat in his office reviewing the footage from the estates. Security cameras. He wasn't spying, he was searching for the truth. He needed to know what kind of woman had somehow become the heartbeat of his son's world. The tapes didn't lie. Maria. Helping Jacob with homework. Maria singing lullabies late at night. Maria teaching him how to plant seeds in the backyard. Maria holding him when he cried. She wasn't just a maid, she was an angel. Asterisk, but Charles also saw something else. Judith, the head maid, walking past Jacob as he cried, scolding Maria for getting too close. He saw Jacob begging to stay with Maria during mealtime, while the other staff rolled their eyes, and he saw how gently, quietly. Maria ignored their judgment because Jacob's healing mattered more than gossip. Asterisk, that night, Charles made a decision. Everything in his life was about to change, and Maria had no idea what was coming next. The next morning, sunlight spilled into the estate like a silent promise. But Charles Langford was already awake, seated at the long mahogany dining table, staring blankly at his untouched breakfast. His mind was consumed by what he had seen the night before, the tapes. The truth, and most of all the undeniable bond between Maria and his son. A bond more real and sincere than anything his wealth had ever bought. Asterisk Maria came into the room hesitantly, her uniform ironed, her hair pulled back tightly. She was unaware of the surveillance review. To her, Charles Langford was still just the mysterious, unreachable man at the top of a golden tower. But today, something was different. Asterisk, you're early, she said softly, eyes downcast, like a servant addressing her master. Asterisk, Charles looked up at her with the weight of unspoken words. Sit down, Maria. Asterisk, she blinked, startled. Sir? I said sit, he repeated, more gently. Reluctantly, Maria sat at the edge of the long table, her hands folded in her lap. Her posture was rigid, ready for reprimand. I owe you an apology, Charles said. She looked at him, confused. For what, sir? Asterisk. For letting my son be raised in a house that had no love in it, except yours. Her lips parted slightly in surprise, but she said nothing. I watched the security footage, he continued. I saw everything. What? You've done for Jacob. The patience, the comfort, the care. You didn't just do your job. You gave him a reason to smile again. Asterisk Maria's throat tightened. No one had ever noticed before, or maybe they had. But they never cared. Asterisk, I didn't do it for praise, sir, she whispered. I did it because he needed someone. He's just a little boy. Asterisk Charles nodded. I'm just a man who was too busy to notice his own son crying every night. Asterisk, there was a long silence filled with the sound of birds chirping faintly beyond the window. And then suddenly Judith, the head maid, burst into the room, clearly unaware Charles had returned to Asterisk Maria. I've told you before, breakfast is not asterisk. Her voice faltered when she saw Charles seated. His eyes locked on her with quiet fury. Asterisk, Judith, Charles said coolly. You're fired. Asterisk, what? Sir, I saw how you treated my son, and how you treated Maria. You passed by a crying child. You belittled someone who stepped up when you wouldn't. Pack your things. Now, asterisk. Judith's face turned pale. She looked at Maria, hatred flashing across her features, but it didn't matter anymore. Her reign was over. Asterisk, as Judith stormed. Out Charles turned back to Maria, who sat stunned, trying to process what had just happened. Asterisk Maria, he said, how long have you been working here? Asterisk, 6 months, she replied. I joined after. I lost my little brother. He died in a hospital I couldn't afford. I came here to save up for nursing school. Asterisk. Charles leaned forward, stunned by the revelation. You wanted to be a nurse? Asterisk, she nodded. Still do? I couldn't save my brother, but maybe I can help someone else. Asterisk, and just like that, the picture became clearer. Maria's tenderness, her selflessness, her need to heal. She wasn't just a kind soul. She was someone born to serve others. In the most human way, asterisk, why didn't you ever ask for help? He asked softly. I didn't think anyone would care, she said honestly. Charles stood and walked toward her. Well, I care. Asterisk later that afternoon, Charles called a meeting with his personal lawyer and estate manager. In a matter of hours, he arranged full sponsorship for Maria's nursing school education anywhere in the country. He also gave her an official position in the household, not as a maid, but as Jacob's full-time caretaker and education support assistant. A salaried role, health benefits, and a future. When Maria found out, she cried for the first time in years. "This is too much." She whispered through tears. "It's not enough," Charles said. "You saved my son's heart. This is the least I can do." But the real surprise came a few weeks later. It was a Saturday morning. Jacob was running through the garden with Maria chasing behind him, both laughing like sunshine in human form. Charles stood by the patio, coffee in hand, a strange feeling blooming in his chest. He hadn't felt this peace in years. Jacob ran to him and tugged at his sleeve. "Dad, can Miss Maria stay forever?" Charles crouched to Jacob's level and looked into his son's eyes. "I hope so, buddy," he said. "I really hope so." Later that evening, as the sun set behind the estate, Charles called Maria to the study. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a letter offering permanent residency, a tuition fund, and a house deed, not a palace, but a warm cottage on the estate grounds, her own. "I want you to have a home," he said. "One you never have to clean for someone else. One that's yours." Maria broke down in tears. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll stay," he said. She nodded, overwhelmed. But fate wasn't finished with them yet. Months passed. Maria began her classes in the evenings while caring for Jacob during the day. Charles, now working from home more, spent his days closer to his son and to Maria. Their conversations grew longer, their silences more meaningful. There was a quiet respect between them, something more. One evening, Jacob drew another picture. This time, it was the three of them holding hands under a rainbow. The crayon words above it said, "My family." Charles looked at the drawing, then at Maria, who blushed and tried to look away. And then, slowly, he reached out and took her hand. "You know, I used to think love ended the day my wife died," he said, "but I was wrong." Maria looked into his eyes, tears shimmering. "She would have loved you," Charles whispered. "Idada, and so do I." That night, the mansion was no longer a monument of wealth and loneliness. It was a home one built, not by gold, but by grace, and for the first time in a long, long while, everything felt exactly as it was meant to be.